The gunshot echoed through the abandoned warehouse, and Seraphina Starhaven watched Magnus Ravenstein, the man she'd hated for 3 years, collapse in front of her, blood blooming across his white shirt as he whispered, "I told you I'd never let anything happen to you." 3 years earlier. The champagne tasted like victory, but Seraphina Starhaven knew it was poison. "Congratulations on the new column." Her editor, Miranda Alvarian, raised a glass in the bustling newsroom of Metropolitan Daily. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in that sterile office glow that made triumph feel hollow. "You've earned this, Sarah. Your investigative piece on corporate fraud was brilliant." Seraphina forced a smile, the kind she'd perfected over the past 6 months, wide enough to seem genuine, shallow enough to hide the screaming. "Thank you. I couldn't have done it without your support." Liar, she thought. You're such a good liar now. Around her, colleagues she barely knew clinked glasses and offered congratulations that slid off her skin like oil on water. They saw the rising star, the talented journalist who'd landed a coveted position at 26. They didn't see the woman who'd leave this celebration and drive to a penthouse prison where she'd trade her body for her father's sins. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Her stomach dropped. 8 p.m. Don't be late. M.R. Magnus Ravenstein. Even his initials made her hand shake. "You okay?" Miranda touched her arm. "You look pale." "Fine, just overwhelmed." Seraphina set down her untouched champagne. The bubbles had already gone flat. "I should get going. Early morning tomorrow." "Of course. Celebrate with that boyfriend of yours." "Ethan, right? 3 years long distance? That's serious commitment." Ethan Crawford, the man who video called her every night from his overseas training program, who sent her flowers on random Tuesdays, who promised her a future that felt like sunlight compared to the darkness waiting for her at 8 p.m. "Hey, beautiful." His voice was warm honey, exactly what she needed. "How'd the celebration go?" "It was great." Another lie. She was drowning in them. "Everyone was really supportive." "That's my girl. I'm so proud of you." Background noise filtered through, voices, laughter. "Listen, I have amazing news. They're letting me come home early, 2 weeks instead of 1 month." Seraphina stopped walking. A businessman cursed as he swerved around her. 2 weeks? "Surprise! I know we planned for next month, but I pulled some strings. I couldn't wait to see you any longer. 3 years, Sarah. 3 years of missing you. We have so much time to make up for." That's wonderful." Her voice sounded distant even to her own ears. 2 weeks. That meant she'd still be trapped when he returned. Magnus wouldn't let her go early. He never broke his word, but he never showed mercy either. "I can't wait." "You sure you're okay? You sound off." "Just tired. It's been a long day." She resumed walking, her heels clicking against concrete. The penthouse was 15 blocks away. She could take a cab, but she preferred to walk. Delayed the inevitable. "Can I call you tomorrow? I need to get some rest." "Of course. Love you, Sarah." "Love you too." The words used to mean something. Now they felt like another costume she wore, like the designer dresses Magnus bought her, or the practiced expressions she'd perfected in his mirror. She ended the call and stared at her reflection in a darkened shop window. 26 years old, degree in journalism from Hartwell University, rising star at Metropolitan Daily, daughter of a dead man who allegedly betrayed the Ravenstein family. Mistress to Magnus Ravenstein, the man who destroyed her life to atone for her father's supposed sins. The penthouse loomed ahead, all glass and steel and money. Sentinel Tower, they called it. 53 floors of luxury apartments where the city's elite live above the common chaos. Magnus owned the top floor, 3,000 square feet of minimalist perfection where everything was cold and clean and completely controlled, including her. The doorman nodded as she entered. "Good evening, Miss Starhaven." He knew. They all knew. The doormen, the cleaning staff, the neighbors who pretended not to notice when she arrived each evening and left each morning. Magnus Ravenstein's companion, his secret, his possession. The elevator's ascent made her stomach drop with each floor. 48, 49, 50. The doors opened directly into the penthouse. Magnus had the entire floor designed that way. No hallway, no escape route, no barrier between the elevator and his domain. He stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, his back to her, hands in his pockets. The city lights painted him in shadows and gold. At 32, Magnus Ravenstein commanded an empire that stretched across real estate, technology, and international trade. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that he kept precisely styled, and a jaw that could have been carved from marble. He wore power like a second skin, in the cut of his suit, the set of his shoulders, the way he never needed to raise his voice to make people obey. "You're late." His voice was cold, smooth. "It's 8:03. Traffic was bad. Serafina set down her bag carefully. Every movement in this place felt like walking through a minefield. "Liar." He turned, and those gray eyes, winter storm eyes she'd always thought, fixed on her with the intensity of a predator assessing prey. "You walked. You always walk when you're trying to delay coming here." Of course he knew. Magnus knew everything.
"Congratulations on the promotion," he continued, crossing to the bar. Crystal decanters caught the light as he poured 2 glasses of scotch. "Your editor spoke very highly of you at the company mixer last week." "You spoke to Miranda?" Alarm shot through her. "I speak to everyone, Serafina. It's how I stay informed." He offered her a glass. "Don't worry, she doesn't know about our arrangement. No one does. That's the point." She took the scotch but didn't drink. "What do you want?" "Want?" One dark eyebrow arched. "You say that as if I'm about to make demands. Can't I simply celebrate your success?" "You don't do anything simple." A ghost of a smile crossed his face, there and gone so fast she might have imagined it. "You're learning. That's good. Intelligence is an attractive quality." "Is that why you keep me here? Because I'm intelligent?" The words came out sharper than intended, but 3 years of rage had to go somewhere. Magnus took a slow sip of scotch, his eyes never leaving hers. "I keep you here because your father's debt needs to be paid. You know this." "My father didn't betray your family." She'd said it 1,000 times. It never made a difference. "The evidence says otherwise." He set down his glass with deliberate care. Ronald Starhaven stole proprietary information from Ravenstein Enterprises and sold it to our competitors. The leak cost us $4 billion and destroyed partnerships that took decades to build. When he was caught, he took his own life rather than face justice. "He was framed," her voice shook. "My father was honest, loyal." "Your father was human. Humans make mistakes." Magnus moved closer, and Serafina fought the urge to step back. He never touched her. That was the cruelest part of this arrangement. He kept her here, controlled her life, owned her time, but he never laid a hand on her. "I gave you a choice 3 years ago, Serafina. Pay the debt through labor or watch your mother lose everything, her home, her medical care, her dignity. You chose this." "That's not a choice. That's coercion." Semantics. He was close enough now that she could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive, cedar and smoke. The arrangement is simple. 3 years of your time. You live here, you're available when I need you, and in return your mother keeps her house and receives the best medical care money can buy for her condition. What exactly do you need me for? She met his gaze, refusing to look away. I'm not stupid, Magnus. You have money, power, connections. You could have any woman you want. Why me? For a moment, just a moment, something flickered in those gray eyes, something that looked almost like pain. Then it was gone, replaced by that impenetrable mask he wore so well. Because you owe me, he said simply, and I always collect what I'm owed. The intercom buzzed. Magnus pressed a button on the wall panel. Yes? Sir, your 8:30 meeting is here. His assistant's voice, professional and crisp. Send them to the study. He turned back to Serafina. We're done for tonight. There's dinner in the kitchen. Eat something. You're too thin. He walked away, disappearing into his study without another glance. Just like that. Dismissed. Serafina stood alone in the massive living room, surrounded by furniture that cost more than her childhood home, staring at a city that glittered with freedom she couldn't touch. Her phone buzzed. Ethan again, sending a heart emoji and a goodnight message. She typed back, "Good night. Dream of me." Then she set the phone down and walked to the window, pressing her palm against the cold glass. Somewhere out there, normal people were living normal lives, falling in love, making choices, being free. 2 more weeks until Ethan came home. 2 more weeks until the end of her 3-year sentence. Magnus had promised he'd let her go when the time was up, but as Serafina stared at her reflection in the glass, a ghost of a woman in an expensive prison, she wondered if a man like Magnus Ravenstein ever actually let anything go. What would you do if you were trapped between duty and freedom? Drop a comment and let me know. I love hearing your thoughts. 2 weeks later. Serafina stared at the simple gold band on her finger, borrowed from her mother's jewelry box, and tried to remember how to breathe. Are you ready? Ethan Crawford stood beside her in the small office of City Hall, looking impossibly handsome in a charcoal suit she'd never seen before. His dark blonde hair caught the afternoon light streaming through the narrow windows, and his blue eyes, warm, honest, everything Magnus's weren't, shone with barely contained excitement. I'm ready. She squeezed his hand, feeling the weight of deception settle on her shoulders like a lead cloak. She hadn't told him about Magnus. How could she? Hey, honey, welcome home from 3 years overseas. By the way, I've been living as a billionaire's mistress to pay off my dead father's debt. Hope that's okay? No, some truths destroyed everything. Ms. Starhaven? Mr. Crawford? The clerk, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and reading glasses on a chain, smiled at them from behind her desk. We're ready for you. Do you have your witnesses? Right here. Amara Ravenstein, no relation to Magnus, thank God, burst through the door with her girlfriend Sophie. Both were Serafina's colleagues from Metropolitan Daily, the closest things she had to friends in a life that had become increasingly isolated. Sorry we're late. Traffic was insane. No worries, Ethan grinned, that easy smile that had made Serafina fall for him 4 years ago, back when she was a college senior and he was a charming graduate student who quoted poetry and made her believe in fairy times. Let's do this. The ceremony was brief, perfunctory. The clerk read from a script she'd clearly recited thousands of times, her voice pleasant but distant, like she was ordering coffee rather than binding 2 lives together. Do you, Ethan Crawford, take Serafina Starhaven to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. His voice was steady, certain. And do you, Serafina Starhaven, take Ethan Crawford to be your lawfully wedded husband? The words stuck in her throat. Somewhere across the city, Magnus was in a meeting, making million-dollar decisions, completely unaware that she was about to break their arrangement. Or maybe he knew. Maybe he always knew everything, and this was just another test she was failing. "I do." The words came out as a whisper. Then, by the power vested in me by the state, the door slammed open. Magnus Ravenstein stood in the entrance, dressed in a black suit that probably cost more than the entire City Hall building, his gray eyes blazing with something that looked like fury and desperation tangled together. 2 security guards flanked him, his men, not city employees. "Stop this wedding." His voice cut through the small office like a blade. The clerk jumped, her hand flying to her chest. "Sir, you can't—" "I can, and I will." Magnus strode forward, and Seraphina's hand tightened protectively around hers. "Seraphina, we need to talk, now." "Who the hell are you?" Ethan stepped between them, all his easy charm evaporating into protective anger. "Security, this man is—" "Magnus Ravenstein, and your fiancée has been living with me for the past 3 years. Did she mention that?" The silence was deafening. Amara gasped. Sophie's mouth fell open. The clerk looked between them like she'd stumbled into a television drama. Ethan turned slowly, and Seraphina watched her entire future crumble in his eyes. "Sarah, what is he talking about?" "I can explain." But what explanation existed? What words could make this right? "She's been my companion," Magnus continued, his voice cold and precise as a surgeon's scalpel. "An arrangement made 3 years ago to settle her father's debt to my family. The arrangement ends in 3 days, not today." "You bastard!" Ethan lunged, but Magnus's security moved faster, intercepting him with practiced efficiency. "Let me go. Sarah, tell me this isn't true." "It's not what you think." Seraphina's voice broke. "Ethan, please, just listen." "Not what I think?" He laughed, a bitter sound that made her flinch. "You've been another man's mistress for 3 years while I was overseas, while I was calling you every night, planning our future, missing you so much I could barely breathe." "I had no choice." The words exploded from her. "My father died, and they said he betrayed the Ravenstein family. My mother needed medical care. She was dying, Ethan. Magnus said he'd take care of everything if I agreed to stay with him for 3 years. It was the only way." "The only way?" Ethan's face had gone pale. "You could have told me. I would have helped. We could have figured something out together." "With what money? You were in a training program overseas. My mother needed surgery, medications, round-the-clock care. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars." Tears streamed down her face now, hot and humiliating. "I did what I had to do to keep her alive." "How noble!" Magnus's voice dripped with sarcasm. "You're not marrying him, Seraphina. The arrangement isn't complete." "The arrangement is slavery." She whirled on Magnus, 3 years of suppressed rage finally breaking free. "You don't own me, Magnus. You never did. I've paid my father's debt with 3 years of my life, my dignity, my freedom. That's enough." Something flickered across Magnus's face. Was it pain? Regret? But it vanished so quickly she couldn't be sure. "You don't understand what you're doing," he said quietly. "He's not who you think he is." "And you are," she laughed, a broken sound. "You're the man who blackmailed me, controlled me, kept me prisoner for 3 years. At least Ethan loves me." "Does he?" Magnus turned his gaze at Ethan, and there was something dark in his expression. "Tell her, Crawford. Tell her why you're really here." "I don't know what you're talking about." But Ethan's voice had changed. Gone was the warmth, replaced with something harder, colder. "The training program," Magnus continued. 3 years overseas. Convenient timing, wasn't it? Right when Serafina needed you most, you disappeared. Tell me, who arranged that program? Who paid for it? That's none of your business.
Caius Vernumer. Magnus said the name like a curse. My uncle. The man who's been trying to take control of Ravenstein Enterprises since my father died. The man who arranged for Ronad Starhaven to be framed for corporate espionage. The room spun. Serafina gripped the desk for support. What? Your father didn't betray anyone, Serafina. He was set up by Caius to destabilize the company, to make my father, and later me, look incompetent. When Ronad discovered the truth, Caius had him killed and made it look like suicide. You're lying. But even as she said it, pieces began clicking into place. Her father's panicked phone calls in the weeks before his death, his insistence that he'd never betray the family, the strange meeting he'd mentioned, the documents he was collecting. Am I? Magnus pulled out his phone, pressed a few buttons, and turned the screen toward her. This is footage from 3 years ago, the night before your father died. The video showed her father in a parking garage, meeting with a man whose face was obscured by shadows. Their voices were muffled, but one sentence came through clearly. You've done well, Ronad. The Ravensteins will never recover from this. Your daughter will be taken care of, I promise. The shadowy figure stepped into the light for just a moment, and Serafina's blood turned to ice. It was Ethan. No! She stumbled backward. No, that's not possible. Ethan, tell him it's not you. But Ethan's face had transformed. The warmth, the kindness, the gentle boyfriend who'd promised her forever, all of it stripped away to reveal something cold and calculating underneath. I was hoping to wait a few more weeks before you found out, Ethan said casually, adjusting his tie. The wedding would have made things cleaner, harder for you to leave once you realized the truth. You, Serafina couldn't breathe, couldn't think. You knew about my father? You were involved in his death? Involved? Ethan laughed. Sweetheart, I orchestrated it. Caius needed someone on the inside, someone who could get close to Ronad, gain his trust, steal the access codes we needed. Your father was so trusting, almost as trusting as you. The world tilted. Amara caught her arm, keeping her upright. Oh my God, Sarah! Our relationship, Serafina whispered, the past 4 years, was any of it real? Does it matter? Ethan shrugged. You played your part beautifully, the grieving daughter, so desperate to save her sick mother. Magnus played his part too, the cruel billionaire keeping you prisoner. But the real prisoner was him, wasting resources protecting you, becoming so obsessed with keeping you safe that he never saw the real threat. Enough! Magnus moved forward, placing himself between Serafina and Ethan. Security is already on their way to arrest Caius. You're done, Crawford. Am I? Ethan's smile was predatory. You think this is over? I have friends, Magnus, powerful friends. And Serafina? He looked past Magnus, his blue eyes, once warm, now so cold, fixing on her face. I'll be seeing you soon. After all, we have unfinished business. Get out, Magnus said quietly, before I forget I'm trying to be civilized. Ethan laughed, straightened his suit, and walked toward the door. He paused at the threshold, looking back one last time. By the way, Sarah, your mother's medical bills? The anonymous donor who paid for everything? He winked. That wasn't me, but you probably already guessed that. Then he was gone, leaving devastation in his wake. Serafina sank into a chair, her entire body shaking. The clerk had fled at some point during the confrontation.
Amara and Sophie stood frozen, clearly trying to process what they'd just witnessed. Magnus dismissed his security with a gesture, then crouched in front of Serafina, bringing himself to her eye level. This close, she could see the exhaustion in his face, the lines around his eyes, the tension in his jaw. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I wanted to tell you earlier, but I didn't have enough proof. If I'd revealed what I knew without evidence, Caius and Crawford would have disappeared. I needed to catch them in the act." "My mother's bills," Serafina heard herself say. "That was you." "All of it, from the beginning." He reached out as if to touch her hand, then stopped, letting his own hand fall. "I know what you think of me, Serafina, but I never wanted to hurt you. Everything I did, keeping you close, controlling your movements, seeming cruel, it was to keep you alive. Caius would have killed you the moment he realized you might discover the truth about your father." "3 years," Serafina whispered. "3 years you let me believe you were a monster." "I am a monster, just not the one you thought I was." He stood, his expression carefully neutral once more, that mask settling back into place. "The car is outside. I'll take you home, your real home, not the penthouse. You're free to go, Serafina. The 3 years are up, and you don't owe me anything." "But—" "No buts." He looked at Amara and Sophie. "Make sure she gets home safely if she doesn't want to come with me. And Serafina?" He paused at the door. "I meant what I said. You're free. Don't waste it on revenge or regret. Just live." Then Magnus Ravenstein walked out of City Hall, leaving Serafina surrounded by the ruins of everything she'd believed was true. Everything you thought you knew was a lie. Have you ever discovered someone you loved wasn't who they seemed? Share your story in the comments. 5 days later. Serafina hadn't left her mother's house in 3 days. She sat curled in her childhood bedroom, surrounded by faded wallpaper and memories of a simpler time, staring at her laptop screen until the words blurred together. Ravenstein Enterprises executive found dead. Suicide, officials say. But it wasn't suicide. She knew that now. Her phone buzzed for the 100th time. Ethan. Always Ethan, calling from different numbers, leaving messages that oscillated between threatening and pleading. She'd blocked 7 numbers so far. He always found another. "Sarah, honey." Her mother's voice drifted up the stairs, weak but worried. "You need to eat something." "I'm fine, Mom." The lie tasted like ash. Downstairs, the front door opened. Serafina tensed, reaching for the scissors on her desk. Ridiculous weapon, but it was all she had. Then she heard Amara's voice, familiar and safe. "Mrs. Starhaven? How is she?" "Not good." Her mother's whisper carried up the stairs. "She won't talk about what happened, won't eat, just sits up there researching." Footsteps on the stairs. Amara appeared in the doorway, carrying takeout bags and wearing the determined expression that had made her an excellent investigative journalist. "Okay, we're doing this." Amara set the food on the desk, closed the laptop, and sat on the bed. "Talk." "There's nothing to say." Serafina pulled her knees to her chest. "My boyfriend was a murderer. My father was innocent. The man I thought was my captor was actually protecting me. My entire life for 3 years was a lie. What else is there?" "How about the part where you're clearly planning something stupid?" Amara gestured at the laptop. "I know that look, Sarah. You're investigating, building a case. What are you going to do with it?" Serafina was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Caius Verneumer is hosting a business gala tomorrow night. All the major families will be there, politicians, CEOs, the city's elite. He's planning something. I can feel it." "And you want to crash it." "I want answers. Serafina opened her laptop again, showing Amara the files she'd compiled. Look, 3 executives who worked on the El Norte project, the one my father allegedly sabotaged, all dead within 2 years, all ruled suicide or accident. But the timing is too convenient. They all died right before they were scheduled to testify about the data breach. Amara leaned forward, her journalist instincts kicking in. You think Caius killed them? I think Caius is cleaning house, and now that Ethan failed to marry me, I am a loose end. Serafina pulled up another file, Magnus's company security logs, which she'd somehow managed to access. For 3 years, Magnus had a protection detail on me. Not guards I could see, shadow surveillance. Someone watching my apartment, my office, the routes I took to the penthouse. I thought he was being paranoid and controlling. But he was keeping you alive. From threats I didn't even know existed, Serafina's voice cracked. Amara, what if everything I believed about him was wrong? What if he wasn't the villain at all? Then you need to talk to him. I can't. You don't understand. I said terrible things to him. I called him a monster, a slave master. I told him I hated him. Serafina pressed her hands to her face. And the whole time he was protecting me from the man I thought I loved. Her phone buzzed again. Different number, same caller. Answer me, Serafina. We need to talk about your mother's continued good health. -E. The blood drained from her face. He's threatening Mom. Amara grabbed the phone, read the message, and her expression hardened. That's it. We're calling the police. And tell them what? That my ex-boyfriend sent a vaguely threatening text? Caius has half the police department in his pocket. Magnus told me that before he left. Serafina stood, pacing the small room. I need to end this. Tomorrow night at the gala, I'm going to confront Caius publicly, make him admit what he did. That's insane. He'll deny everything. Not if I have proof. Serafina pulled out a flash drive. Before Magnus released me, he gave me this. He said not to open it unless I was in danger. I think it's evidence, recordings, documents, something that proves Caius and Ethan killed my father. Then give it to the police, to the FBI, to someone official. Caius controls official. The only way to take him down is publicly, where he can't hide. Serafina met her friend's eyes. I'm going to that gala, with or without help. Amara sighed, recognizing the stubborn set of her friend's jaw. Fine, but I'm coming with you, and we're telling Magnus. No! Yes, Amara pulled out her own phone, because if you're walking into danger, you need backup, and like it or not, Magnus Ravenstein has the resources to keep you alive. He doesn't want to see me. Are you kidding? That man looked at you like you were the only person in the world. Trust me, Sarah, he'll come. The call came at midnight. Magnus stood in his penthouse office, staring at his phone screen, reading Amara's text for the 3rd time. Sarah's planning to confront Caius at tomorrow's gala. She has evidence. She's going with or without protection. Please help her. -AMRAA Ravenstein. No relation, but we should stick together. Liam entered without knocking. Sir, we intercepted another call from Crawford to Mrs. Starhaven's mother's house. He's escalating. I know. Magnus set down his phone with careful precision. Increase security around Mrs. Starhaven. 3 guards, rotating shifts, unmarked vehicles. If Crawford comes within 100 yards of that house, I want to know immediately. And Miss Starhaven? Magnus was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Serafina was planning to throw herself into danger to avenge her father. Brave, reckless, impossible woman. Sir, Liam prompted gently, "What do you want to do about Miss Starhaven?" "What I should have done 3 years ago." Magnus turned, his expression hardening into something cold and determined. "I'm going to tell her the truth. All of it." The next morning, Serafina woke to find a garment bag hanging on her bedroom door. Inside, a midnight blue gown that probably cost more than her car, elegant and understated, with a note in precise handwriting. "You'll need this for the gala. Wear the bracelet. It has a tracker and panic button. Don't make me use it. M.R." Tucked in the bag was a diamond bracelet that caught the morning light and threw rainbows across her childhood walls. "He knew," Serafina whispered. "Of course he knew." Her mother appeared in the doorway, leaning on her cane. 3 years of expensive treatment had given her back some strength, color in her cheeks that hadn't been there since Dad died, all thanks to Magnus. "That man has been sending flowers to the hospital every week for 3 years," her mother said quietly. "The nurses told me. Always white roses, your father's favorite. Always with the same note, for Ronald Starhaven, who deserved better." Serafina's throat tightened. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you needed to hate someone, honey. Grief needs a target." Her mother crossed the room, touched the expensive fabric of the gown. "But Magnus Ravenstein never gave you a reason to hate him, did he? He gave you a reason to survive." "Mom!" "Your father's last words to me were, 'Tell Sarah to trust Magnus Ravenstein. He's the only one who can keep her safe.'" Tears streamed down her mother's face. "I didn't understand until later, until after you'd already made that arrangement. Rona knew he was going to die. He knew Caius would come after you next, so he made a deal with Magnus. 3 years of your safety in exchange for pretending to be the villain." The room spun. "Dad knew? He arranged it?" "Not the specifics, but he trusted Magnus to protect you in whatever way necessary." Her mother cupped Serafina's face. "That man didn't keep you prisoner, sweetheart. He kept you alive. And tonight, when you walk into that gala wearing his protection, remember that he's been doing this for 3 years, without thanks, without recognition, because your father asked him to." Serafina stared at the gown, the bracelet, the note. Understanding crashed over her in waves. Magnus's coldness, keeping her at a distance so she'd never be used against him. His control, monitoring her movements to intercept threats. His cruelty, pushing her away so Ethan and Caius would think she meant nothing to him. His freedom, releasing her the moment he thought the danger had passed. "I've been so wrong," she whispered. "Then make it right." Her mother squeezed her hand. "Before it's too late." The Grand Aurelius Hotel. Evening. The ballroom glittered with old money and new power. Crystal chandeliers threw diamond light across marble floors where the city's elite mingled in designer suits and couture gowns. Waiters circulated with champagne that cost more per bottle than most people's monthly rent. Politicians laughed with CEOs. Entrepreneurs courted investors. Everyone wore masks of civility over teeth sharpened for business. Serafina stood at the entrance in Magnus's midnight blue gown, the diamond bracelet cold against her wrist, and felt like she was walking into a lion's den wearing a suit made of meat. "You look terrified," Amara whispered beside her, elegant in borrowed emerald silk. "Try to look like you belong here." "I don't belong here. I never did." But Serafina straightened her shoulders and walked in anyway, the flash drive burning like a brand in her hidden pocket. She spotted Caius Vernumer immediately. He stood at the center of the room like a sun that lesser planets orbited around, tall, silver-haired, distinguished in the way that only decades of privilege could create. At 63, Caius commanded respect and fear in equal measure. He'd built his own fortune separate from Ravenstein Enterprises, but everyone knew he'd always coveted his brother's empire. And now, with Magnus's father dead, Only Magnus stood between Caius and complete control. "Miss Starhaven," Caius's voice carried across the ballroom, smooth as poisoned honey. "What an unexpected pleasure! I didn't realize you'd received an invitation." Every head turned, conversations died, the music played on, but no one was listening anymore. "I invited myself." Serafina walked forward, each step measured, her heart hammering against her ribs. "We need to talk about my father." "Your father?" Caius's expression was perfectly sympathetic, perfectly false. "Yes, such a tragedy. Ronid was a good man who made a terrible mistake. But suicide is always shocking, isn't it?" "It wasn't suicide. You had him murdered." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone's champagne glass shattered against marble. Caius's smile never wavered. "That's quite an accusation, my dear. Grief can make us say irrational things." "I have proof." Serafina pulled out the flash drive. "Recordings, financial transactions, emails detailing how you framed my father for corporate espionage, then killed him when he discovered the truth. Should I play them here, or would you prefer a private conversation?" For the first time, something flickered behind Caius's polished exterior. Calculation, fury. "Where did you get that?" "Does it matter?" Serafina's voice was steady, even as her hands shook. "3 executives who worked on El Norte are dead. My father is dead. All of them killed to cover up your scheme to destabilize Ravenstein Enterprises. How many more people have to die for your ambition?" "Serafina." Magnus's voice cut through the tension like a blade. He materialized from the crowd, devastating in a black tuxedo, his gray eyes locked on hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "What are you doing?" "What I should have done 3 years ago, finding the truth." "The truth?" Caius laughed, addressing the crowd now. "The truth is that this young woman has been my nephew's mistress for 3 years, paying off her father's debts in the most traditional way possible, and now she's trying to create drama to distract from her own shame." Murmurs rippled through the ballroom, judgment in every whisper. "Is that what you told everyone?" Serafina's voice rose. "That I was his whore? That my father was a traitor? You're good at lies, Caius, but I have evidence of the truth." "Then show it." Caius spread his hands magnanimously. "Please, enlighten us all." Serafina moved toward the ballroom's display screen, flash drive in hand, but before she could connect it, strong arms grabbed her from behind. A cloth pressed against her face. Chemical sweet, sickeningly familiar. Chloroform. "No!" she struggled, but the world was already tilting. Through blurring vision, she saw Ethan Crawford smiling at her, dressed in security uniform that gave him access everywhere. "Sorry, sweetheart," he whispered against her ear. "You should have just married me when you had the chance." The last thing she saw before darkness claimed her was Magnus's face, twisted in fury and fear as he lunged forward, screaming her name. Consciousness returned in fragments. Cold concrete beneath her cheek, the smell of oil and rust, distant traffic sounds muffled by thick walls. Serafina's head pounded as she struggled to sit up. Her hands were zip-tied behind her back. "She's awake," Ethan's voice was, no longer warm or charming, just cold, clinical. "Where am I?" Her voice came out hoarse. "Somewhere your boyfriend won't find you, though I'm betting he'll try." Ethan pocketed his phone, walked over and crouched in front of her. This close, she could see the complete absence of humanity in his eyes. How had she ever thought he was kind? "You killed my father." The words came out flat, empty. "Personally? No. I just made sure he was in the right place at the right time. Caius's man did the actual work. Business, not personal. Though I'll admit, dating you for a year before your father died was tedious. All that poetry and romantic bullshit. Do you know how exhausting it is to pretend to be in love?"
Why are you telling me this? Because you're going to die anyway. He said it so casually, like commenting on the weather. Once Magnus trades himself for you, and he will, because he's predictable, Caius will have control of Ravenstein Enterprises, and you'll both have tragic accidents. Probably in this very warehouse. A lover's suicide pact, perhaps. The media will eat it up. He won't come alone.
We're counting on it. Caius has already called the police, tipped them off about Magnus's illegal activities. They'll raid the warehouse right as Magnus is attacking us. He'll be arrested for assault, kidnapping, corporate espionage. We've planted so much evidence he'll never dig his way out. Ethan stood, stretched like he was preparing for a workout. It's actually brilliant. Caius gets the company, I get my payoff, and the two of you become a cautionary tale about forbidden love. Serafina tested the zip ties. Too tight. The diamond bracelet Magnus gave her was still on her wrist, the panic button, but with her hands behind her back she couldn't reach it. One question, she said, buying time. The past 3 years, why stay overseas? Why not come back sooner? Because Magnus had to believe you were safe, had to think the threat had passed. Ethan's smile was predatory. The longer I stayed away, the more he relaxed his guard, the more you believed our relationship was real. By the time I came back, you were so desperate for freedom that you'd do anything, including marry me without questioning it. I loved you. I know. It was pathetic. He checked his phone again. He's coming, alone, like we demanded. God, he really is predictable. The warehouse door slammed open. Magnus stood silhouetted against the doorway. No guards, no backup visible. Just him in his tuxedo, his hands spread to show he was unarmed. Let her go, Crawford. Your fight is with me, not her. See? Predictable. Ethan pulled out a gun. Where had he been hiding that? And pointed it casually at Serafina. Come in slowly, hands where I can see them. Magnus walked forward with the careful precision of a man crossing a minefield. His eyes found Serafina's, and she saw everything in that look. Fear, fury, apology, determination. I'm here, Magnus said quietly. Now, let her go. Why would I do that? She's leverage. Ethan gestured with the gun. On your knees. Magnus knelt, never breaking eye contact with Serafina. Whatever happens, he said softly, I need you to know something. 3 years ago, your father came to me. He'd discovered Caius's scheme, but knew he couldn't expose it without being killed. He asked me to protect you, whatever it took. The arrangement, the coldness, making you think I was a monster, it was all to keep you alive, to make sure Caius and Crawford thought you were just a debt payment, nothing more. If they'd known how much you actually meant to me— Touching, Ethan interrupted. Really, it's like a bad movie. But here's the thing, Magnus. You failed. She's going to die anyway. You both are. Actually, a new voice said from the shadows, that's where you're wrong. Liam stepped into view, flanked by a dozen security personnel. Behind them, more figures emerged, police officers, real ones, not corrupted by Caius's money. Ethan spun, gun swinging wildly. How? The bracelet. Magnus's voice was calm now, certain. She's been transmitting this entire conversation, every confession, every threat, all recorded and sent directly to the FBI. Serafina felt the bracelet against her wrist, warm now, active. She thought she couldn't reach the panic button, but Magnus had activated it remotely the moment he'd entered the warehouse. You bastard! Ethan's face contorted with rage. He turned the gun back toward Serafina. Then she dies now! The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space, but Serafina felt no pain because Magnus had thrown himself between her and the bullet, his body slamming into hers, knocking her backward as the shot meant for her heart hit him instead. He collapsed on the concrete, his gray eyes finding hers one last time. Worth it, he whispered, blood on his lips. 3 years of keeping you safe, all worth it. Don't you dare die on me, Serafina sobbed, her hands pressed against the wound, trying uselessly to stop the bleeding. Magnus Ravenstein, don't you dare! Bulletproof vest, he managed, a ghost of a smile crossing his face. I'm not completely predictable. Then his eyes closed.
Red Dot General Hospital, 2 days later. The antiseptic smell of hospitals would forever remind Serafina of waiting. Waiting for her mother's test results, waiting for her father to come home that last night, waiting, now, for Magnus to wake up. The bullet had cracked 2 ribs despite the vest. The impact alone nearly punctured his lung. But he was alive. Alive and sleeping in the private suite where Serafina had spent 48 hours refusing to leave his bedside. Caius Verneumer was in federal custody, his empire of corruption crumbling under investigation. Ethan Crawford faced charges of conspiracy, kidnapping, and accessory to murder. The recordings from the warehouse had been devastating. Every word, every confession, every threat captured in crystal clarity. The media was calling it the scandal of the decade, but Serafina didn't care about any of that. She cared about the man in the hospital bed, the steady beep of his heart monitor, the most beautiful sound she'd ever heard. You know, Magnus's voice was rough from disuse. Most people would have gone home by now. Serafina's head jerked up. He was awake, those gray eyes watching her with something soft and unguarded she'd never seen before. "You're awake!" She was at his side instantly, resisting the urge to throw her arms around him. "How do you feel?" "Like I got shot," a weak smile. "But alive, that's something." "That's everything," her voice broke. "Magnus, you could have died. That vest, what if it hadn't been enough? What if—" But it was. He reached for her hand, and this time she let him take it. His fingers were warm, strong, alive. "Serafina, we need to talk." "About what?" "About 3 years ago. About what really happened." He shifted in the bed, wincing. "Your father came to me 2 weeks before he died. He'd discovered evidence that Caius was embezzling from Ravenstein Enterprises and framing him for it. But he couldn't go to the police. Caius had too many connections. So Ronad asked me for help." Serafina listened, her hand tight in his. "I promised to protect you, but I knew Caius would be watching for any sign that you were important to me. So we created the debt story, made it seem like I was keeping you close out of revenge, not protection. Your father agreed to make it look like suicide." "What?" Serafina pulled back. "My father killed himself?" "No." Magnus squeezed her hand. "He faked his death. Or rather, we tried to help him fake it. But Caius found out, sent men to the scene. Your father fought them off long enough to activate a recording device. That's how I got the initial evidence. But they killed him before we could extract him." Tears streamed down Serafina's face. "He was trying to escape. He was trying to protect you. His last words to my father, who was there trying to help him, were, 'Keep Sarah safe, whatever it takes.'" Magnus's voice was gentle. "So I did. I made you hate me, kept you isolated so Caius couldn't use you as leverage, paid your mother's medical bills anonymously, because if Caius knew you had a weakness, he'd exploit it. And I never, ever touched you, because the moment I did, it would become real, and real things can be destroyed." "The flowers," Serafina whispered. "White roses every week at the hospital." "Your father's favorite. It was the least I could do." Magnus looked away. "I failed him, Serafina. I couldn't save him, but I could save you, even if it meant you'd hate me forever." "I don't hate you." The words came out fierce, certain.
Magnus, I was so wrong about everything. I thought you were a monster, but you were the only one telling the truth, the only one actually protecting me. I was cruel to you. You were distant, cold, controlling. She cupped his face, making him look at her. But you never hurt me, never touched me without permission, never forced me into anything except staying alive. And every cruel thing you did, sending me home when I was exhausted, monitoring my movements, crashing my wedding, all of it was to keep me safe. Serafina, let me finish. She took a shaky breath. 3 years ago, do you remember your 30th birthday party? Magnus blinked at the subject change. Vaguely, I left early. Because you were upset. I saw you outside the garden, sitting alone. You looked so lost. The memory was crystalline, perfect. I didn't know you then. I was just a junior columnist covering society events. But I brought you a drink and sat with you. We talked for an hour about nothing important. Books, music, the ridiculous extravagance of birthday parties. And when I left, you smiled at me and said, "Thank you for seeing me." Do you remember? His eyes widened. That was you. That was me. Before my father died, before everything fell apart. Serafina's voice softened. You probably don't remember, but I do, because for 1 hour I saw the real Magnus Ravenstein, not the billionaire or the CEO or the man everyone feared, just you. I remembered. His voice was barely a whisper. When your father came to me asking for protection, when I saw your name on the paperwork, I remembered the girl who'd been kind to me when everyone else wanted something. And I thought, if I could save just one person from Caius's schemes, let it be her. You loved me even then. I've loved you since that birthday party. For 3 years loving you was torture, having you close but untouchable, knowing you hated me, watching you love someone who was using you. Magnus's thumb traced circles on her palm. But I'd do it again, 1,000 times over, because you're alive, and that's all that matters. I love you too. The words felt like freedom, like truth. I think I fell in love with you somewhere in those 3 years, in the quiet moments when you'd leave books I'd mentioned wanting to read, or make sure my favorite tea was always in stock, or the way you'd watch me when you thought I wasn't looking, but I was too angry to admit it. And now? Now I'm done being angry. Serafina leaned forward, resting her forehead against his. Now I want to start over. No debts, no arrangements, no lies. Just us, figuring out what we could be without all the tragedy.
That sounds perfect. Magnus's hand came up to tangle in her hair. But I have one condition. What? Marry me. At her shocked expression, he laughed softly. Not now, not even soon, but someday when enough time has passed that you're sure this is real, when you can look at me and not see the man who kept you prisoner, but the man who loves you. Marry me then. Yes, the answer came without hesitation. Yes, Magnus Ravenstein, I will marry you, someday. They kissed then, soft and careful because of his injuries, but full of promise, full of a future they'd both fought so hard to reach. The door burst open. Amara stood there with flowers, Sophie behind her with balloons, both freezing at the scene before them. "Oh my God," Amara breathed. "Are we interrupting?" "Yes," Magnus and Serafina said in unison. "Too bad," Amara grinned, coming in anyway. "You scared us, Ravenstein. Don't do that again." "I'll try not to get shot in the future," Magnus said dryly. "See that you don't," Sophie set down the balloons. "Sarah's been a wreck. We've never seen her this emotional." "She loves me," Magnus looked at Serafina with such open adoration that even Amara sighed. "Disgusting," Amara declared, but she was smiling. "But also kind of beautiful.
Fine, you can keep him, Sarah. I intend to. Serafina laced her fingers through Magnus's, solid and real, and finally hers. A year later. The wedding was small, private, just family and close friends in the garden where they'd first met 5 years ago at Magnus's birthday party. White roses everywhere for Ronald Starhaven, who'd set this all in motion trying to save his daughter. Serafina wore simple ivory, no veil, her mother beside her with tears of joy streaming down her face. Magnus waited at the altar in a gray suit that matched his eyes, Liam beside him as best man, looking vaguely uncomfortable in formal wear. "Dearly beloved," the officiant began, but Serafina barely heard the words. She was too busy memorizing this moment. The sunshine, the flowers, the man who'd sacrificed everything to keep her safe, looking at her like he was his entire world. "I do," Magnus said when his turn came, his voice steady and sure. "I do," Serafina echoed, meaning it with every fiber of her being. When they kissed, the small gathering erupted in applause. Somewhere in the city, Caius and Ethan sat in prison cells. Somewhere, justice had been served. But here, in this garden, surrounded by love and light and the ghost of a father who'd protected his daughter even in death, here there was only happiness. "Mrs. Ravenstein," Magnus murmured against her lips. "Mr. Ravenstein," she replied with a smile. "I love you." "I know. You've been showing me for 5 years. I'm a journalist. I'm good at finding the truth. But now I get to spend the rest of my life showing you too. That's all I've ever wanted." They walked back down the aisle, hand in hand, past white roses and happy tears, toward a future they'd earned through pain and sacrifice, and finally love. Behind them, Amara turned to Sophie. "You know what? I think they're going to make it." "After everything, they'd better," Sophie grinned. "I'm not crying at another one of these things for at least 5 years." But she was crying anyway. They all were. Because some love stories begin with tragedy, some begin with lies, but the best ones, the real ones, end with truth. And truth, Serafina had learned, was worth fighting for. The end. So, what did you think? Have you ever had to fight for the truth in your relationships? Drop a comment below and share your story. I'd love to hear it. And don't forget to hit that like button if this story touched your heart.